Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner Casey Weade. Casey is the president of Howard Bailey Financial.
Whatever risk you face during your retirement years, we've got a plan.
A published author and radio host.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
His advocacy for retirees and pre-retirees has made him a sought-after speaker and trusted financial leader.
And putting a real plan together.
This is the Purpose-Based Retirement.
Good to see you again. I am Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade and Marshal Johnson, certified financial planners from Howard Bailey Financial. You know, a comfortable retirement is what we all hope for, of course, but not as many of us spend as much time as we should really kind of planning our financial lives to make that easier. So today we're going to start the program with a look at some of the top 20 tips for managing your financial life. Now, we're not going to get through 20. We're going to start with some good ones, but what brought you to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to I came across this article and I thought it was great for anybody at any stage in their financial life when it comes to their personal finances, but there were a couple of them in here that I think really had an impact on my personal financial life, and those that I've seen have been most successful after sitting down with thousands of successful retirees and pre-retirees. I've been able to find, here are some of the things that are pretty consistently done. Now, some of these others, I kind of say, yeah, they're good, but they don't apply widely enough to our audience, and these really do, I think.
Okay, well, this one, the first one might make you sweat a little bit, and that is,
you think so?
Casey wants you to talk about money. He encourages you to talk about money.
It seems like these days we see everybody, I mean, in 5 minutes into any conversation, whether we're out to eat or, whether you're sitting down with your spouse, you're talking about politics within 5 minutes. It seems to be the topic of the day today. However, money has been so taboo still today that we don't talk about it. Even with our spouse, we don't have these types of conversations. And I implore you, don't ever sit down with a financial advisor until you've actually had this discussion about your goals and about your purpose with your spouse, especially if you're making that transition into retirement for the first time, because there's going to have to be some sacrifices made. When we take a look at your entire financial picture, if you want more emphasis placed on health care, then you're going to have to maybe give up some income. If you want a larger emphasis placed on income, you're going to have to give up maybe some legacy assets that you plan on leaving behind for the heirs. So have those discussions to make sure you're in line on when you want to retire, how much income you want in retirement, what the right emergency fund size looks like, how much you want to leave behind to your heirs. And I know those things may sound a little intimidating to have that discussion or to start it. Well, come in and sit down with a financial advisor if you're having that much trouble. They can kind of coach you through, at least initially, these are the things that we should be thinking about, and here is how we begin to prioritize. And sometimes this process of starting from the interview stage to the implementation stage, it might take 3 or 4 months before we actually figure all these things out. And that's perfectly fine. It shouldn't happen overnight. You have to be on the same page. You have to discuss these things.
Yeah, and I don't want to push us along here on this topic, but we went from generations that didn't talk about money. You look at my grandparents, great-grandparents.
The silent generation.
The silent generation. What that did is it created an awful lot of headaches for baby boomers trying to clean up mom and dad's estate. So now we're starting to see the reverse, where a lot of baby boomer retirees are going, I want the kids involved. I want them to be in the meetings because I want them to know what they need to do when we're not around. So talk about money. Best thing you can do.
All right, so number 2 on this list is know where you stand. Now, what do you mean there?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where we sit down with a lot of individuals throughout the week, and sometimes they just have a general idea of how much they have in assets versus liabilities. At least be able to write on the back of the note, the note card here, the napkin.
Flip over the back of the envelope and
be able to write down what your assets, liabilities, net worth are. This is, if you listen to Dave Ramsey, we were talking about Dave Ramsey, those folks know exactly what their debt, their assets, and their liabilities are, but at least have a general idea, because knowing your numbers is where you start, Lee. You have to start with knowing your numbers.
You can't know where you're headed without knowing where you're at today. You can't walk into an advisor's office and say, I'd really like to know how to retire. Well, where do you stand? What do you have in assets? Where are those assets? And I think there's a point, as you make this transition into retirement, if you've never really taken the time to understand your finances, there's never been a more important time to do it as you make that transition in retirement. Now, maybe you've spent the rest of your life, prior years, worrying about education when it came to your career, but now there's nothing more important when it comes to education than education about your money, so you really understand each one of those investments and what purpose they're going to help you accomplish during your retirement years. If you don't understand your investments, you don't understand your finances, either your plan's too complicated or it's time to sit down with someone that can really start to structure a strategy in the first place.
Taxes, taxes, taxes. So critical, right?
Yeah, taxes are a big one, and we talk all the time about how complicated the tax code is, but we would encourage folks to at least try to do their taxes just one time on their own, just so they can appreciate and understand their situation. Heck, I'd just rather people understood their W-2. Take a really good look at your W-2 and understand all those deductions, understand the type of taxes. It's hard to have a good, educated Social Security discussion until you know what you're paying into Social Security.
And this should be a CPA's job, quite honestly, but it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem to happen. The CPA these practices get so wrapped up in just tax preparation, and that becomes their sole source of income that they're a processing factory, and they don't get into actually coaching people through how to not just save taxes today, but how to reduce your tax burden in the future. And that takes time, that takes commitment, and that's often where the CFP or Certified Financial Planner can come in, sit down, and act as your tax coach so you can really understand those things. I think one of the things that if you only get one thing from the show, realize that we have a graded tax system. We have marginal tax brackets, and it's always good to make more money. I hear all the time, I don't want to make any more money this year because Uncle Sam I'll have to pay more in taxes. You'll have to pay more in taxes, but you'll put more money in your back pocket at the same time. The marginal tax brackets, if you're in the 25% tax bracket, you may have an effective tax rate of 13%. It doesn't mean you're paying 25% on everything. Every single dollar you make beyond that gets taxed a little bit more, but that's okay because you're still putting money back in your pocket. Understand the tax code, and you'll end up understanding the heartbeat of your financial life.
I want you to hit this one quickly, but I think it's important. You're an investment advisor, but you don't want people to invest as much as you want them to do what?
Save. It's about saving. It's not about investing. I see a lot of the wealthiest people didn't have the best rates of return. I see a lot of the people that had the best rates of return and the fastest growing portfolios sometimes have the smallest portfolios because they just haven't saved that much. The people that have done the best, the millionaire next door, he didn't get where he is by picking Yahoo back in the 90s.
Right.
He didn't get where he is by buying into Apple, buying into Facebook on the IPO. What she did was spent some time saving. That's it. They saved and they didn't lose. They remembered Warren Buffett's #1 rule of investments, which is never lose money. And rule #2, never forget rule number one.
Exactly. And cover your insurable needs. Put some words behind that.
Yeah, spend some time really protecting your wealth. You're accumulating wealth, so let's spend some time protecting it. What happens if you end up having a heart attack or having a stroke, and now we have medical bills that are $6,000 to $10,000 a month for the next year or 2 years? You're protecting not just your wealth, you're protecting your legacy, you're protecting your family.
Real quick before we go, don't think about retirement as an age or a destination. Think about financial independence first.
Right. I think too many times we get wrapped up and people say, I'm retiring at 65. Well, why are you going to retire at 65? Well, that's retirement age, right? I get Medicare. Or I'm retiring at 67. Why are you retiring at 67? Because that's full retirement. We actually get more Social Security benefits at age 70, so why not? If you're waiting on maximum benefit, let's go to 70.
Right.
It's not an age. It's about financial independence. No matter where you're at in your financial life, I think this is a key to financial success. Think about the most successful individuals in the world, the entrepreneurs that have made a biggest impact in this world. What have they focused on? They focused on getting to a point where it didn't matter anymore. Right? They focused on a point where you said, well, I spend $40,000 a year. What do I need to sustain my retirement? Well, I need to get to a point where I have $800,000 saved. And that's going to take care of creating $40,000 a year for the rest of my life. And I'm going to get there as fast as I possibly can. Not when I'm 65. I'm going to get there as fast as I possibly can, whether it's 35, 45, or 55. We rush to that point, and then it changes our life and our outlook on it.
I like the sound of that. Here's an opportunity I hope you'll like the sound of. Jump on the phone right now. If you are one of the next 10 people who call right away, we're offering a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan, an opportunity to learn about your money so you can make the best decisions possible going forward. So for the next 10 callers, Casey and the team will make time on the calendar to sit down, visit with you, and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. We have questions from viewers coming up next. Stay with us.
When you have confidence in your retirement future, you can live the life you've always imagined. Because of planning, you now have time to reflect on the wonderful memories of your life. You and your spouse finally have the luxury of leisure time together. To spend fun times with your grandkids, sharing the joy of their excitement about life. Smiling at the thought of quality time with your children and of picking up the check. At last, you have time to breathe and rekindle the love of your life. Why? Because you imagined what could be. You planned for retirement. So today, you own your future.
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
Thank you for staying with us through the program. During the week, Casey gets emails and calls with questions from viewers. We pull out the best of those and ask people to join us on the program, and that is why Melanie from Cherubusco is with us today. Melanie, go right ahead.
How much cash reserves should I keep in case of a down market?
Cash reserves for a down market?
Well, Melanie, that question really depends on where you're at and kind of your different income sources. So this is a really difficult question to answer for your specific situation because everybody's different. But here's some guidelines and some things to think about when it comes to setting aside some cash in case of a down market. It depends on your income sources and how reliable they are first and foremost. So typically in your accumulation years, on your way to retirement, you're working and you've got a regular income. However, you could lose your position. And so if you don't have pensions, you don't have Social Security, you don't have annuity income, if you don't have that guaranteed income source, then you typically want to keep a little larger cash balance or cash reserves on the sidelines. And the same thing is true when you get to retirement. If you've got a lot of guaranteed income sources that cover your basic living expenses, then you may not need much cash at all. Maybe it's less than 12 months. Maybe it's 3 to 6 months in cash reserves. And so you're spending $5,000 a month. Maybe you want to keep $15,000, $30,000 in cash reserves between savings and checking. Now, if you're relying on stocks and bonds and real estate to take care of those cash reserves and that's your retirement income source at the same time, then you probably want to keep a little larger cash reserve since all of that retirement income is reliant on at-risk assets. And it's not really so much a matter of liquidity. It's not that we're setting aside cash so that we have greater liquidity because we can sell stocks, we can sell ETFs, bonds, mutual funds, and generate cash. But what that cash is sitting on the sidelines for is when the market is down, when those stocks are down, bonds are down, real estate is down, that you're not forced to sell those things at a loss and you can endure those bad times. Now, the average bear market lasts around 14 months on average. And so we want to make sure, typically we want to keep a year and a half in cash for that purpose if we're relying on a market-based portfolio. Now, as you can see, it's just there's no scientific way to do this. If you're relying on the 4% withdrawal rule, you might want to send 10% of your cash on the 10% of your portfolio on the sidelines, because if you have 10% of your portfolio on the sidelines, that means using the 4% withdrawal rule, you have about 2.5 years of cash that will protect you in a down market.
Yeah, and I think viewers are watching you talk about 10, 15, 20,000 in cash. The reality is that 66 million Americans don't even have an emergency fund. So your question about cash is so important, I think, for folks to understand that most folks can't handle a $400 emergency. So build that cash reserve, not just for buying opportunities, but also as that nest egg, whether you're 25 or whether you're 65.
Sure. Sometimes we have to do that with retirees when they come into the office. Maybe you've set aside a few $1,000s as your emergency fund. Well, we may have to set aside some dollars. We might have to postpone retirement a little bit in order to generate more cash reserves in order to satisfy that retirement need. Some people want to use a home equity loan, and they say, well, that's my emergency reserve that I've set aside. Well, guess what? The bank doesn't guarantee your home equity loan. Your line of credit can be canceled. It can be reduced, and that happened to a lot of people during 2008, and that forced them into some very difficult financial positions. So build some cash reserves. There's nothing wrong with cash. Cash is king, and that's where the smart money is.
All right, Melanie, thank you for your call. Let's head southwest from Busco now to Columbia City. And Ben, what's up on your mind, Ben?
Yeah, what investments should I have in retirement? I mean, should I use a target retirement fund or just keep a mix of index funds like I do now? And I'd like to know, what should my stock and bond ratio be?
Well, that's a good question, Ben. When we talk about stock and bond ratios, what's typically talked about?
Rule of 100.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Take your age, your
Rule of
100 minus your
right?
age, yeah.
Yeah, and the Rule of 100 says just that. We take our age, put a percentage behind it, and that's how it should be in fixed income. Now, I want you to start thinking about this a little differently, Ben, and instead of saying we're going to use index funds or target date retirement funds, that's fine. If that's your only investment strategy because you're not working with a financial planner, you're not really putting together a financial plan, you're just kind of hoping for the best and planning for the best, then you should probably follow the Rule of 100. And if you're 65, put 65% in fixed income. However, that's not how a real financial plan is built. A real financial plan focuses on the risks and says, these are the dollars I can't afford to risk. Maybe that's your liquidity fund, your income dollars, your healthcare dollars. So if you've got $1 million portfolio and we're spending $50,000 a year, maybe we're setting $50,000 aside into our emergency fund. Maybe we're going to set aside, $400,000 to create $20,000 to $30,000 a year to supplement our pension or Social Security income. We're going to set aside a couple $100,000 to take care of guaranteeing our health care expenses are always taken care of, and then we're risking the rest. And quite often, when we put that plan together based on your actual needs, we get pretty close to that Rule of 100, but it's never exact because it shouldn't be, because you're not in a position that makes you exactly like every single person out there in the world. You've got a unique financial situation that requires a unique financial plan.
Yeah, because you look at it today, if somebody's 37 years old, they may say, well, I don't want to have 37% in bonds.
Yeah, 30 years before I retire.
Right,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
if I'm 82, actually, I can take more stock risk at 82 than I could at 62. So that Rule of 100 is not perfect, but you ask about target date funds. If you are somebody that just doesn't watch the market and wants to look at it once every couple of years, then at least you've got some autopilot.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, sometimes when people are tied up in their 401ks and they can't have somebody help them with the management,
Sure.
they don't want to do it.
They don't have
that can
interest.
be a great
Yeah.
answer.
Or if you're very
to make
young.
sure you're just not too bond.
Right, if you're very young and using one of the new robo investment services.
Oh
right?
yeah, there's a lot of great opportunities. I mean, we're talking about index funds and low-cost investments here, and that's what I really like about your question here is that you are focused on costs, and that means you've been reading some of our material that we've been putting out there, because that's one of the biggest hindrances that you're going to experience if you're not focusing on those things. They can rob you of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of retirement income straight in the way of fees. And even some of those target date funds can be very expensive if you don't pay attention to your expense ratios. Some of them can be very inexpensive too. That's where somebody like us comes into play.
We've got to move it along because Renee over in Hicksville, Ohio is on the line. Renee, go ahead.
It seems there's some conflicting information out there on inheritance taxes. Do I have to worry about my heirs paying taxes on their inheritance or not?
Most likely not, Renee. Now, I don't know exactly 100% if this is your case. However, I can give you some of the numbers. Now, in Indiana, the state inheritance tax went away just a few years ago. So that may be where some of that conflicting information is coming from, because it hasn't been gone for all that long. Back December 31st of 2012 was when Indiana inheritance tax was actually repealed. And now we've got the estate tax. So the only thing you could potentially have to worry about is federal estate tax. And that federal estate tax limit is $5.49 million per individual. Now, combine two different, if you're married, then you get to combine and use both of those credits for your unified credit, and that's about $11 million as a combined tax exemption. So I wouldn't be too concerned in all likelihood that you're going to get into a federal estate tax issue, but if you're above that $5-10 million range, then it's definitely time to sit down and work with not just your CFP, not just your estate planning attorney, also bring in your CPA. You may want to take a look at setting up some charitable trust, setting up some ILETs and different types of trusts to start to get some of those assets out of your estate and make sure you don't have to pay any of those inheritance, or I should say estate taxes.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to this is a time of great uncertainty, and just because it's 11 million today, it may change dramatically in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So just stay on top of it. Don't set it and forget it.
It was just $1 million not all that long ago, and you were taxed at 55% above that. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're staying on top of these and doing annual reviews, because the law changes quite dramatically even from year to year, especially when it comes to tax law. That book's not small.
And as deep in debt as our government is, you know the cash has got to come from someplace, right? Renee, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching, too. We hope that you will be one of our next callers. If you call 482-9559, we have a special offer for the next 10 people who call us right now. It's a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan, an opportunity to learn more about your money so you can make really good decisions for yourself and your family moving forward. So for the next 10 callers, Casey and the team will make time on their calendar, visit with you, and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. So we're going to be taking a look at exactly what is a market correction. So here's our question of the day. Is a market correction a 5 to 9% dip all the way up to 19, or does it require 20% or more? We have the answer coming up.
It's your retirement. How will you live it? How will you be remembered?
Will you be able to send me an invitation?
Will you be there for my ball games?
Will you teach me your values? Will you be able to play with me?
Oh, help me go to college.
How will I remember you?
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshal Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
Market's been kind of on a roll lately, but you can't forget about the possibility of a correction. But exactly what is that? We gave you some choices in our question of the day. Casey, what is considered a market correction?
Well, when it comes to a market correction, I have to chuckle a little bit, because everybody wants to know, well, what's, every time the market dips, well, this looks like a correction. In reality, there are some technical market corrections here, and a technical market correction is B, 10 to 19% would be labeled as a market correction. So I want to spend a little bit of time here understanding market corrections, because they happen, and they happen quite frequently. So what can you do to prepare and understand what these things are and how they affect your future? So let's talk about a technical market correction, or a pullback, or a bear market. When it comes to a pullback, that's 5 to 9% from the market's highs. A correction is 10 to 19% from market highs, and a bear market is a 20% or more pullback from the market's previous highs. So let's put that into context. Taking a look at history, we can see that from 1900 through 2013, there were 123 market corrections. That's more than one time per year that we can expect to have a market correction of 10 to 19%. And there were 32 bear markets during that period of time. 32 bear markets during that period of time means that's one every 3.5 years where we see a drop of 20% or more. So expect it in the future because it's happened in the past. So 1 every 3.5 years of a bear market means the market's pulling back 20% or more during those periods of time. That's a big pullback, and it can be a very scary period of time. But let's take a look throughout history and see what those good times look like as well. We can see these green periods are bull markets and these red periods are bear markets. So the last bear market we experienced was around 2008, 2009. That was our most recent one in memory, a pullback of 51% being a bear market. Prior to that was 45% during 2001. And we can see that the run-ups, those bear markets, are much bigger, 900%, 800%, 800% plus, 100%, 222%, means that we do make up those losses as long as we have time. And that's the key here, because I think there's something that this chart doesn't do for us. It doesn't take us back to, say, 1929. From 1929 to 1932, the market's down 89%, and it took 25 years to get back to even. Most recently, it's taken nearly a decade, 2 times in a row here over the last 20 years to get back to even. And so if that's the case, that means we have to have time where we can go through these ups and downs and typically have at least 10 years in order to endure some of these bear markets that you will inevitably have. So what triggers a market correction in the first place? Well, there's several different things that we can point out. One being profit selling. 2, corporate earnings. And those would typically be missed corporate earnings where we're targeting a specific range and they miss those earnings, come in below those. And then we have technical analysis. That's technical analysis or market technicians that are out there today are taking a look at the market, comparing it to where it's been in the past and saying, well, the market based on history should have a pullback. We need to start selling now. And the biggest one's probably fear. Fear can be found anywhere, and that can be found anywhere from the Ebola virus all the way down to electing President Clinton as president. We need to be very cautious about fear because it's often irrational. Now, these black swan events can be very scary though. Black swan events might occur like 9/11. So 9/11 was a great example of a black swan event where after that we saw a market correction accentuated by what we had seen during the tech bubble bursting, and we saw consequently a bear market after that market correction. So let's take a look at this bull market. Over the last 7 years, we've seen over a 200% increase in the market from $100,000 invested back in February of 2009 would have turned into $300,000 by the end of 2016, a 200% plus return. But are you getting concerned? If you're like most people, if you're normal, then you are a little bit concerned because we have seen one of the longest bull markets in history, and this is something we call the investor psychology cycle. You go through these different times of optimism, excitement, thrill, euphoria, you buy in the top and say, wow, I'm smart, and then the market falls, we sell out, we get desperate, and we feel hopeful. It's a vicious investing cycle, but what we can recognize is that the bear ultimately retreats in all circumstances. The bear ultimately retreats. We just have to be prepared when these things happen because the bear will come. We just have to have an exit strategy when that occurs, and we have to have an income strategy. We have to have a plan. If we can be prepared and understand that these things are going to occur and have a plan if they do, then we can have a successful retirement.
Yeah, well, if you get a bear market every 3.5 years and we haven't had one, we're way overdue, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And one of the things that we can do is simply just focus on your risks. What happens? And put yourself in that mindset. Sitting where you're at today, add up all the different assets that you've collected over the years, take your IRAs, 401ks, etc. Now you're stepped into retirement and you've got X amount of dollars, $200,000 or $2 million or $20 million, whatever it is, take that number, cut it in half, and does it change your way of life? How are you going to handle it?
Well, that's an important thing. So we hope that you'll take advantage of this offer for the next 10 people who call us right now. It's a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan, an opportunity to get an education about your money so that you can make the best decisions you can moving forward and hopefully protect yourself against that bear market. We'll see you next time around. Take good care of yourselves.